Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Jason Waldrop. He's the president of Managed Services at Red River Technology. Jason, good to have you with us.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's good to be here.
And let's just set the scene a little bit with what Managed Services Red River provides and who you provide them for. What's your specialty?
Yeah, sure. So think of us, best way to describe us is we are some or all of an IT department for commercial and federal organizations. So these days it's very difficult for businesses and agencies to completely staff, have all the expertise they need, all the tools that are required to do everything from whether it's end user service desk, monitoring and managing network infrastructure, data center and communications and collaboration systems, and of course now cloud and cyber. So most of these most clients need some help in those areas, and we either come in and take over certain service towers, service desk, data center, cloud, et cetera, or we work in conjunction with the client's IT organization to supplement. Maybe we're the after hours guys, the weekend folks, or the folks they escalate to and provide tools, telemetry, monitoring, and remediation.
And you feel that agencies that don't use these types of managed services eventually will? And there's some research to show that?
Yeah, that's right. So, as IT has gotten more complex over time, shared services as opposed to just putting dedicated people on contract and waking up every day and monitoring that customer's environment, right? That gets expensive over time. So we think that over time, the commercial industry has already gone here, right? So our commercial customer base has already gone to a model where there's a mix of folks who wake up and do dedicated things for that client, but then leverage shared managed services. We think the federal market is on its way there. We're starting to see it in the form of curated, like specific service offerings, let's say managed backup as a service or unified communications as a service. And we think it'll ultimately make its way into more broad-based sort of end user services and monitoring and management services.
And how does the cloud figure into this? Because a lot of that stuff happens in the cloud, by the cloud.
Yep, that's right. In the federal market, the cloud gets a little bit more complicated depending on, are we talking about civilian, DoD, FedRAMP, and there's a handful of sort of regulatory concerns that go on with the cloud in the federal market. But what the cloud allows the client to do, and IT organizations do, is to have access to what they need when they need it, and kind of as opposed to paying for a massive sort of plot of digital real estate that they may or may not need over the course of the next 5 years, and they're stuck in that particular hardware software platform, right? The cloud allows them to have elasticity in consumption and to move in and out of the environment as their organization has demand.
And what are the trends driving all of this? I mean, you have telework, maybe might be one of them, that hybrid nature of the infrastructure. What else?
Yeah, well, post-COVID, telework has become the norm. As you know, we're seeing a lot of folks. If you look at just job postings, if it doesn't say remote work, you don't get a lot of response, right? So that's been a definite culture change in both commercial and federal. If you think about it, a lot of times the user's first experience is opening their laptop they get in from FedEx in their driveway from their company, right? That's their welcome to the company moment, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure, for a lot of our clients, we make sure that out of box experience is really, really clean and frictionless. That they open that laptop, it's got all the applications they need, and they can get right to work, right? So that's become a major trend, is that remote work and sort of that digital workspace for the end user. But then the cyber threats are everywhere. Cloud has introduced sort of a VPN-less environment that allows folks to work on iPads, laptops, iPhones. So having a suite of curated services that allow that user to access the corporate's, the agency or company's intellectual property in a secure, frictionless manner across all their devices. Like that allows folks to work from home, to work from the soccer game, and then to get into corporate office or agency office and do their thing there as well, right? So remote work, cyber, and cloud are really the drivers that we see in this post-COVID world.
And what are the challenges people might face, and how do they overcome them in moving to this managed service type of model?
Yeah. Well, moving to managed services, right? There's a couple of forms of that, right? There's curated services. So let's think about identity services in the cloud, which is a real problem as agencies move to the cloud. You have different versions of that remote user, right? You have that remote user on an iPad that they bought themselves, and they're trying to access corporate resources, right? So you have to kind of determine the security posture of that session, okay? You have that remote user accessing agency information from a laptop that was provided to them by the agency that they know is secure, and then you have that same user who might come into corporate or agency headquarters and be behind the agency firewall accessing information, right? So having a suite of curated sort of identity-based services that allow this remote work in the cloud, managed service providers deliver that every day to federal agencies and commercial customers. So some of the challenges there are often an agency is already invested down a certain road. Maybe they have a certain set of tools in place, and they've got to kind of figure out, hey, if I want to move to a managed service, I may have to move off of some of those platforms and consume what the managed service provider is bringing, or work with my managed service provider to get them to modify their service to use the tools that I've already made my investments in. So that's often the conversation we find ourselves in with clients.
And also, do you help fill in, because this is a 24/7 type of requirement, because people are working in one form or another around the clock for most agencies, or maybe in different time zones. So that's where maybe the handoff could go to the managed service provider after Eastern Standard Hours, for example.
Certainly, that's one of the big values. We often joke as a managed service provider. We don't get sick. We don't go on vacation. We don't go to sleep. You can grow us or shrink us on demand. I mean, that's really one of the primary values that we bring. Aside from, we have a point of view because we have hundreds of customers, so we're seeing whether it's cyber events or cloud deployments across a broad array of enterprises. So we bring that expertise to a client that couldn't possibly have that perspective, and then we bring a 24/7 operation with a stack of tools that we work on every day, right? So those are clear reasons why folks consider moving to a managed service provider.
And how do you work physically? That is to say, do you have people on premise for agencies? Do you have help desk people that might be roaming around, say, a large floor? Or is it all done remotely through a VPN or a VPN-less type of technology back to Red River?
Sure, it's client specific, but in general, we have people signed to the customer, right? So they may show up at that client's location every day, doing whether it's desk side support, network management, et cetera. And then often there's a mix of shared services that happen out of one of our service delivery centers, where there's lots of folks that put a headset on every day and are serving multiple customers at any given time, like overnight, weekends, alert management, real common way for folks to take cost out of their system. Because if you think about it, if you're an agency and you want to have your own 24/7 operation, right? You've got to staff, like you got to put a bunch of staff on for cover nights and weekends. Whereas if you kind of lay that into a managed service, we can have our shared service delivery center looking after hundreds of customers, and we're driven by what are referred to as SLAs. So we're going to make representations to that agency that when that event comes in, we're going to respond to it in a certain amount of time and resolve it in a certain amount of time. So that's how we're held accountable in the relationship.
And the SLA brings up a question I wanted to get back to, and that is the curated services. And you mentioned identity management. And if a agency has its own suite of services, their ICAM is whatever they have assembled, or you can provide that and you curate those that chain of software that adds up to ICAM, for example. Can the customer have an SLA for their own products that they're already operating and that they maybe hand over, or does that only apply to the guarantees only for what you curate for the agency?
Yeah, so it works both ways. Okay, so sometimes a customer comes to us and says, "Look, we just need help." Okay, and so we've got. So as a result, we have this suite of curated services. Again, everything from backups to anti-malware to identity, you name it. There's a bunch of things that everybody needs, right? And sometimes customers just say, I need some help here. So we call it sometimes like, hey, I'll take the one on the mannequin, right? So we have that for clients, and clearly there's a very distinct set of SLAs that go along with that. But in many other cases, We're doing a project with a client right now who has, they don't want to use, at least initially, any of our tools, right? They want our expertise, our processes, access to, all of our kind of IT service delivery strategies and all of that, but they want us to come in and leverage the tool sets that they've already invested in. So that's a collaborative process through the contract negotiation where we say, okay, we agree on a suite of SLAs to deliver that service to their end customer.
Okay. What about AI? Is that a service people are wanting, and how does that all fit into this picture?
In managed services, it's funny, like we spend a lot of time at Red River thinking about our AI strategy, okay? And there is a general belief that managed services will be the tip of the spear in leading our AI endeavor, because if you think about what we can do from a tier 0 and tier 1 support, so that all those everyday, I can't print, my iPhone's not working, like these are common problems, or maybe even it's like application specific thing that's got a clear knowledge base article written for that customer, right? Well, AI chatbots can allow that end user to self-service, right? In natural language, hey, I'm having trouble printing from ServiceNow, okay? And well, maybe we've got a knowledge base article that we can feed them straight away. Now they don't have to get on the phone, talk to an agent. They just get their problem solved through AI in that manner, okay?
So then you have a curated set of articles or information base, but only that, so that it doesn't get wild and other stuff comes in.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So it's in our business, a lot of customers have their ITSM platform, ServiceNow. There are others, and we'll go have the models learn that system for them. It can also do things like learn their HRIS system. So hey, I need a badge access to the Montreal office or whatever it is like that, and that can all happen through AI and self-service now.
It sounds almost like a latter-day intranet, and a lot of companies, a lot of agencies try to do all this knowledge basis stuff on an intranet, but they're expensive, they take a lot of maintenance, and people don't always access them that much.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We've all kind of gone down that road, and some have worked better than others. I do think AI and machine learning and this natural language interaction with that data and information is gonna really be a game changer for end users.
And do you also provide on-premises help people? Because sometimes someone just wants to grab a collar and say, "Come fix this for me."
Yeah, close support or desk side support. That's part. So when we set up our relationships, if we're doing the end user, we don't always do end user. Sometimes we're just doing network, data center, cloud, but we do plenty of end user work. So there you kind of break it into two buckets. Service desk, okay, which is kind of I can't print and all that, and that's where you're starting to see AI creep in. But then we have what we call end user services. This is close support activity, imaging, disconnect, reconnect. Sometimes you just have to go jiggle the cable, right? Like that's just how it is.
And do you operate in only the small agencies that may not have a lot of the CIO type of resources, or do you also find that large agencies need managed services?
Yeah, we go top to bottom, Fed Civ through DoD and into Intel. So at Red River, the services are different. So think like in a micro agency, that engagement might feel to us more like a mid-market, like if we were to provide managed services to WTOP, okay? Or like they need kind of everything and they want to buy what's on the mannequin, right? They don't have any infrastructure to support, so they're going to outsource the whole thing. The bigger it gets, the more narrow often the managed service is. So maybe they just want managed backup, so they just want unified communication as a service, right? So we have solutions that run up and down the stack, and to include classified and non-classified.
But when you say buying everything on the mannequin, that means the whole soup to nuts.
Yeah,
to make another analogy, type of arrangement.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, sometimes the customer says, "Look, I don't want a single IT person on staff. Here's the keys," and we charge them a monthly fee based on, how many users they've got, locations. There's a lot of ways to structure the relationship, but you kind of size it up, and they pay a monthly fee for a suite of SLAs, and we deliver outcomes to them.
And getting back to the SLAs, what are the top elements that should be in a managed service SLA?
Yeah, it's almost always respond time and resolve time across let's call it 4 different severity levels, and then you get into other things like context. So if you have a contact center and you have end users calling in, you might be wanting to create an SLA around average time to answer, abandon rates, time in queue. There's a bunch of contact center stuff that you can measure, support organizations on. And then if it's a full-fledged sort of infrastructure as a service, uptime, availability, those things come into play.
I guess cyber resilience also would be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of times that's like a respond time type thing, right? If you've got a cyber event, you want to respond to that in a certain amount of time and resolve it in a certain amount of time.
And it's, I guess, in terms of cyber, there's a shared responsibility there. Even though you do hand off to a managed service provider, you have to control who it is that can access, for example, which is something the provider can't know for you.
That's right. I mean, every one of our engagements has a very clear and well-defined RACI and shared responsibility matrix, so that there's no, because boundary establishment, specifically in cyber, what's the client's responsibility, what's the managed service provider's responsibility, what's the maybe hyperscaler's responsibility in the case of Amazon or Azure or Google. That all has to be clearly spelled out so everybody knows what lane they're swimming in. Okay,
final question. What do you look for when choosing a managed service provider before you get to that SLA stage?
Here's what I hear from our clients, okay? Our clients appreciate that Red River brings a broad portfolio of services and has a very mature service delivery capability. So what that allows them to do is consolidate vendors. They don't have to have their storage person over here, their unified communication person over there, their cloud person over here, and their cyber vendor over there, right? They can kind of bring all of that under one relationship. And these days, with these things being so commingled and codependent, it's important that there's no finger pointing between vendors. Hey, I got the network, it's the cloud guy's responsibility, right? So what I hear from our clients is they appreciate our ability to allow them to consolidate vendors, plus the scale that Red River has. We can bring a lot of cost efficiency because of just the sheer mass that we bring to the table. So cost reduction, breadth of portfolio, and maturity in service delivery are what I hear from our clients is why they appreciate our relationship.
Well, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's been a great time. Thank you.
Jason Waldrop is the president of managed services at Red River Technology. I'm Federal Drive host Tom Temin. You're watching Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Red River Technology.